Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and I'm really excited because I'm going to be talking to you about one of the pieces I love more than any other piece of music in history. Indeed, it was one of the very first pieces of music that got me into classical music, and I'll explain to you why, and why I do the same for you as it did for me, although you're already with me, so it doesn't matter as much. But let me get to the point. Haydn Symphony number 88. It doesn't have a nickname. The letter V was the nickname, but nobody knows what it meant, and so we got rid of it, which is great. It's just number 88. It's not one of the Paris symphonies. It's not one of the London symphonies. It's just number 88. It's also one of the very greatest symphonies that anybody ever wrote, anywhere, at any time, any place, full of original features that I'm going to talk about. But here's the bottom line of 88. Why is it so special? What made it so special for me personally, was the trio of the minuet. The trio of the minuet is a pastoral scene with bagpipes. It has drone basses and this beautiful pastoral country-like tune on the oboe with the drone bass going. When I was a kid, I liked bagpipes a lot, and I actually had a set of bagpipes at one point sitting in my closet. And, one of the things that blew me away, I never knew music could do this, was that when I heard that minuet, and it was my grandmother's recording of it, I remember like it was yesterday, it was on her Victrola, I knew that music could say something. It could say something to me without words, totally without words, and I knew what it meant. I knew it. I just knew it. I heard the bagpipes. I heard the thing. I went, oh, okay, it's bagpipes. It's outdoors. It's a scene. I saw it in my mind. It absolutely blew me away. I might have been 6, 7, maybe, pushing it. It had that kind of effect on me. It was that immediate, and it was that visceral. I just saw the image, and I understood what that music was saying to me then and there. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I wanted to hear music without words that made me see something or feel something or that moved me in some way, completely without having to have a text. Because let's face it, when you're that little, what text do you get? You get Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or, Baa Baa Black Sheep. The words are stupid. You're not going to get words of any depth. You know what I mean? But you can have images. You have dreams. Even as a child, you have dreams. You have emotions. Your emotions and feelings are real. And so music with words at that age didn't do anything for me because it was all the same, silliness. But those emotions were just as strong and just as powerful and just as meaningful as they are now, or as they'll ever be. And it was music without words that did it. And it was Haydn's Symphony number 88 that put me there. So let's talk about the work a little bit. It's remarkable in a lot of other ways too, not just because of that wonderful pastoral moment in the minuet. First of all, Haydn reserves his trumpets and drums for the slow movement. That was an extraordinary thing. There had never been trumpets and drums in a symphony in G major before Mozart's Linz Symphony, actually, I think, is the first example of it, and then Haydn's. But he deliberately waits to bring them in a fortissimo pow. And of course, most performances, especially on modern instruments, minimize the excitement and the shock of that moment. And it's to the credit of the original instrument movement that these trumpet and drum interjections, which would have been so exciting to Haydn's audiences, have been restored to their original startling quality by the use of period instruments. And also, it's very funny, Haydn marks these moments, fortissimo, forte. They don't do it because they're using period instruments. They do it because they trust what Haydn wrote. Time and time again, I listen to these performances, whether they're on regular instruments or period instruments, and I hear something startling, and I go and I look at the score, and they're simply doing what's there. And no one's done it before that way. I mean, if you look at the dynamics again in the trio of the minuet, where you've got the bassoons are marked forte or double forte, and the low basses and everything else is piano. It's like Mahlerian orchestration. You have simultaneous dynamics and textural layering, and all of that gets obliterated in most performances. It's a tragedy. But the other reason that the symphony is so amazing is because it is an intellectual tour de force. And I don't mean that, again, intellectual in terms of, brainiac, boring intellectual. I mean intellectual in terms of keeping your mind engaged and rewarding your intelligence if you bother to listen with some intent. And I'll give you a very, very simple idea of how. The piece does not have, it's not a romantic symphony. It doesn't have a motto theme, but it has a motto. The motto is a rhythm, and the rhythm is the simplest thing in the world. It is simply 4 notes in equal rhythm. Bump, 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 bump. That's it. But if you listen carefully to the symphony, you'll find that every single movement is unified by that rhythm in a way that Haydn highlights, so you know what it is. So, for example, the first subject of the first movement, bum bum ba dum bum bum ba dun dun da dum bum bum bum, and that motive is immediately detached. It's dun dun da dum bum bum ba dum bum bum ba dum bum bum ba dum. So you remember 4 notes in equal rhythm, right? And then in the finale, in the slow movement, in the Largo, which is that gorgeous melody for solo cello and oboe that Brahms said he wanted his 10th symphony to sound like, or something like that, some crazy remark. When the trumpets and drums come in their eruptive entrance, it's with that motto. It's bum, 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 which is bum, bum, ba-dum, to slow it down. Bum, 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 and you get the same thing. The minuet, you just take a twist, and you get beat-a-dum, ba, bum, bum, ba, ba-da-dum, 1, 2, 3, 4, ba-da-dum, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all it is. The same rhythm. And then when you get to the finale, the Rondo, which is just one of the most brilliant movements anybody ever invented, which has as one of its episodes a triple canon based on the same Rondo theme. I mean, it's contrapuntal genius, but the tune, dun 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 ba da da dum bum 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 ba da 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 1 2 3 4 da 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 dum 1 2 3 4 da 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 bum 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 bum, etc., etc. 1 2 3 4. If you can count to 4, you know Haydn's 88th. And the whole point about, things like this is that it creates an organic relationship between all of the movements of the symphony. You may not even be conscious of it, but it's there, and it's very, very real. And this is at a time when symphonies were not terribly unified. They weren't thought to be high art. They were overtures. They were diversions. They were played, two movements at the beginning of the concert, the finale at the end, that people switched and changed and moved them around. They were treated badly, right? But here you have Haydn, the great master of the classical style, seeing his works whole, creating completely unified musical organisms in 4 separate parts, but that could not be placed anywhere else. I mean, the movements of this symphony belong in this symphony and in no other symphony. Even the theme of the Rondo, bum 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 ba da da dum bum 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 ba da da dum, it appears at the end of the second subject in the first movement. It's bum bum ba dum ba da da bum 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 ba da da dum bum ba da da dum bum. It's there. Everything that you need to understand what's going to happen in this symphony occurs in the first movement, and everything that comes after is in some way a development of those incredibly simple initial ideas. But it's just, I frankly am struck. I'm struck dumb by the genius of this symphony. I really am, by creating so much out of so little, out of such simplicity, to create just worlds of expression. That's, I have to stop. I mean, I can go on blathering like this for ages, and I know that you'll probably criticize me for having done it, but that's how much that music means to me. And what even as a child, I realized there was something there. And you have to hear it again and again and again. And every time it reveals a little bit more of itself. And it's still doing it 50 some odd years later. And that, my friends, is just incredible. So let me talk to you about recordings. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I'm very particular about this symphony, I have to tell you. There are only a few that make my cut, that have the trio or the scherzo, that have, I think, the motivic understanding of what's going on in the piece, and that have that refreshing, you're hearing it for the first time feel. And it's a mixture of period instruments and regular instruments. The first is Leonard Bernstein with the Vienna Philharmonic. Of course, he recorded it for Sony as well. It was one of his earliest recordings with the New York Philharmonic. I may have been even with the Columbia Symphony. I mean, it was an early Columbia recording. I have to go check, but that's not the performance I'm recommending. You have to hear his Vienna Philharmonic performance. First of all, he adds a second half repeat to the first movement, which no one else has ever done because it's not there. But he figures it should be there. And why the heck not? It sounds terrific. This is also the symphony where, in that famous video with the Vienna Philharmonic, he does the finale as an encore and he doesn't conduct. He just stands there and nods at them while the Vienna Philharmonic plays it without a conductor. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. And this performance is absolutely glorious, a glorious performance by one of the great Haydn conductors who ever lived. I mean, Bernstein and Haydn was a special thing. It was as unique and special as his Mahler. And it's just wonderful, wonderful to hear. Next, Thomas Fye with the Heidelberg Symphoniker, the Heidelberger Symphoniker. His Haydn 88 was tremendous. It was one of his early Haydns. They got worse as they went. It happens so often in large-scale projects to record all the Haydn symphonies. He became faster and stiffer and more inexpressive and more unyielding. Here, he's in great shape. With 88 is brilliant and exciting and heavily influenced by the period instrument movement. It's lean and mean, but everything is okay. Everything is in place. He hasn't become mannered and kind of perverse in the way he treats the instruments, and it's played to the nines and brilliantly recorded. Next, another period instrument performance. This is Tafelmusik with Bruno Weil. This is a really, really good performance of number 88. Some of the symphonies in this set I find a little plain spoken, but 88 has the personality. It's got the color. They nail the trio of the minuet. It's really first rate. And again, like all the period instrument performances, I shouldn't say all because we're going to get to one, but most of them, it's very quick. There's room in this symphony for a little more luxuriating, I think, in the Largo particularly, but also you'll hear in the finale, but it's beautiful. However, we have to do some normal instruments, traditional instruments. Untitled. This was, of course, the first great complete Haydn cycle. It still has fabulous performances in it, and 88 is one of them. It's an interesting addition to the score. There are some quiet adjustments to like timpani parts and things that I don't hear anywhere else, but boy, does he hit the tree with a minuet. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's those big, rich drone bass, bagpipey type sounds. It's gorgeous beyond imagining. It really is. I love this performance. I will always love that performance. It's very, very special. Next, Nick McGagan with the Philharmonia Baroque Ensemble. This is really a good record. The Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra. You get 104, 88, and 101. And 88 is a smoker. It's another performance that's full of that keenly observed detail. I mean, what you really want in this symphony, in number 88, is personality. Just lots of personality. The music has so much character. It's not polite. It's not effete. It's full of, it has cow manure in it. It has rustic charm. It has the country. It has the most elegant, heavenly melody in the slow movement. It has to have emotional range. It has to have tremendous personality. And for me, the performance with the most of all of those qualities, is Franz Bruggen. Now, Bruggen is another one. One of the ironies of Bruggen's performance is that, they're on period instruments, but as a conductor, he was such an interventionist. Oh my God, he was such a romantic. He was always fiddling and playing and tinkering, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Boy, does it work in number 88. It just goes to show how much personality the music has, because Bruggen, he does things that no one else does. You hear every strand of orchestral color. He makes sure that everything is distinct, but it all has flow. It all makes sense. And the best thing about Bruggen's performance, the best thing about this one, is that the finale is actually quite slow. And it's wonderful. It just waddles around the poultry yard. It's it has this self-satisfied, wonderful. It's like it's chuckling as it's proceeding along. It's fabulous. And it just goes to show that with period instruments, you don't have to play them at 4 times the speed as anyone else ever has. And in fact, the music sounds better if you give it a little time to breathe, to phrase, to let the music exude all of the joyfulness and emotional expressivity that you could put into it. This music is not dainty, it's not fragile, and it's not mechanical. It's human, and it's warm, and it's vocal, and it should sing, and Bruggen does. Damn it, he really, really does. So for my money, Franz Bruggen and the whatever the heck he's playing, the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment, the Orchestra of the 18th Century, I don't know, it's one of these. I don't care. It's an orchestra of something. It's an orchestra of wonderful musicians who make fabulous music in Haydn's Symphony number 88. So thank you for joining me, especially for this talk. This one, it just has a lot of personal significance for me. This is one of the pieces that just will awaken you to the wonderful, fabulous world of music and of Haydn's music. My God, in particular, we have so many reasons to keep on listening. Thank you, and if you enjoyed this chat, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're going to do all 104 Haydn symphonies one at a time before we're done. Mark my words. Bye-bye.